Men are supposed to be protectors, guarding attacks from predators, ensuring children maintain their innocence. In addition, men are mandated to lay down lives for their wives, protect our extended families, ensure no harm comes during your watch. What happens when the men who are paid to provide protection for female prisoners instead satisfy lustful desires and engage in sadistic torture? You have an epidemic of abuse similar to what we will go over today. Correction officers at Albion Correctional Facility and other New York State docks facilities have been accused and some arrested over violating female prisoners. Some have filed civil lawsuits not only alleging being victimized, but also claiming New York State docks has laid the foundation for all these abuses to happen. Albion Correctional named in lawsuit alleging cover-ups of rape, sex assault reports. This article is from February 18th, 2020, but it's very relevant to today because this civil case is currently in the discovery phase. Albion, New York, Albany, New York. The Albion Correctional Facility is among several prisons in New York named in a federal lawsuit by plaintiffs who allege cover-ups of rape and sexual assault reports. The lawsuit, filed on behalf of 5 individuals who served time in women's correctional facilities, alleged the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision failed to protect them from sexual abuse and acted with, quote, deliberate indifference to allow that abuse. Pause. One important thing to note is that currently there are 6 individuals in the civil suit. A 6th individual was recently added. Dock supervisors cultivated a culture that allowed male staff to prey on female inmates to satisfy their sexual desires, the lawsuit claims. Rather than investigate offer sexual abuse of female inmates in good faith, Doc's investigators blamed the victims and coerced them into making statements, threatening punishment against those who chose to remain silent, and discrediting many of those who spoke up. 5 inmates identified in the lawsuit as Jane Stone, numbers 1 through 5, are listed as plaintiffs on the case. Some of the plaintiffs were said to be incarcerated at the Albion Correctional Facility during times relevant to the lawsuit. One claim alleges that Jane Stone, number 1, was raped multiple times by corrections officer Jason Castangue. WKBW reports Castangue was arrested in September on 2 counts of rape, 4 counts of criminal sex act, and 4 counts of official misconduct. A separate claim involving Jane Stone 2 alleges corrections officer David Stupnick had illegal sexual contact with the inmate on multiple occasions. Stupnick was charged last May with 4 counts of sex abuse, 2 counts of criminal sex act, and 2 counts of official misconduct. The Department of Corrections declined comment, citing pending litigation. Let's jump to a new segment about this.
A new lawsuit claims that male guards at Albion Correctional, Lakeview, and 2 other prisons downstate sexually abused female prisoners on a routine basis. An attorney representing those women told Channel 2's Claudine Ewing today the bosses of the accused officers did nothing about it.
5 female inmates identified as Jane Stone 1 through 5 at 4 different prisons, including Albion and the Lakeview Shock Facility, are suing corrections officers, the Commissioner of Corrections, and other high-ranking officials. Here's what the attorney says was happening at Albion.
One involved long-term grooming by a particular guard targeted at a particular inmate. It was repeated sexual abuse and rape over a long period of time.
The attorney for the plaintiffs, Zachary, he mentioned the term grooming. Now, one thing everyone has to understand is that if you are an inmate, whether you're male or female, in any correctional facility, you cannot give consent to sexual contact. You are not in the position to give sexual consent because of your incarceration status. Now, Zachary made reference to the term grooming. Typically, when we hear the word grooming, we think of children, we think of an adult giving gifts, an adult giving favors to a kid to eventually commit some sort of sexual act. Now, this happens in correctional facilities frequently, in which you'll have a correctional officer who will groom a female inmate in hopes of getting sexual favors. It's also very important to know that corrections officers have a tremendous amount of power over inmates in prison. They can dictate whether you go into solitary confinement. They can dictate a lot of things. There's a lot of punishments that can happen for inmates who defy correction officers.
And in another case, he says the woman was attacked by an officer.
When the attack ended, she preserved his semen and brought it to investigators.
Under the New York penal law, an inmate can never consent to sexual activity with an officer. According to the 79-page lawsuit, corrections supervisors cultivated a culture that allowed male staff to prey on female inmates to satisfy their sexual desires. There were others who saw what was happening and just giving a wink, wink and letting it go.
So that's exactly what we're alleging. There's really this sense amongst the guards that the women are these temptresses and that the men just can't help themselves.
This attorney just mentioned, her name was Victoria. She is no longer with the firm. That's my understanding based on my research. I'm assuming she's no longer representing these plaintiffs, but the first attorney that we saw speak is still representing these clients. What the lawsuit alleges is that you have a culture where correctional officers are preying on inmates. The attorney for the complainant stated that they lived in fear, that they're in terror if they report these sexual assaults, which is absolutely deplorable. Again, corrections officers have such power over inmates, and there's a system where if someone does report an assault, that there could be immediate retaliation up to and including a beating.
At Lakeview, victims and officers were covering for each other, according to the plaintiff's attorney. The complaint says they knew that multiple confirmed rapes had occurred in their facilities. They knew individual inmates were complaining of rapes that were unsubstantiated because the victims were routinely and unfairly discredited based solely on their status as inmates. And if this is happening, according to what I'm reading, almost on a daily basis from time to time, then this begs the question, who's supervising the supervisors?
That's an excellent question, and the problem is nobody is. The only way it's happening is two things. The inmates are live in terror of reporting it.
The lawsuit says they had a system of warning each other if a supervisor was approaching and created a climate of fear and intimidation against any woman who complained about sexual attention from an officer.
Just finally time for something to be done, and we hope that this will empower more women to come forward.
At last check, the accused corrections officers are not working. Some have been criminally charged for either sexual assault or official misconduct. As for the female inmates, they remain locked up. We reached out to the state for a response. As of airtime, we have not heard back. Claudine Ewing, Channel 2 News.
Just to close, I mentioned before that currently this case, the civil case, is in the discovery phase. And for those people who don't know what discovery means, it means that both sides, the plaintiff's attorneys and Letitia James' office, they're providing each other with documents and evidence pertaining to the civil case. In addition, there was a sixth complainant who was added to the civil case. Also, in the initial court filing, there were a couple of investigators who were not named because their name wasn't available at the time. This lawsuit has subsequently added the names of the investigators who were unnamed in the initial 2020 filing. For those of you interested, I can go over the 79-page court filing for those who want to do a deeper dive and know specifically what these women are alleging. If there's at least 20 comments in the comment section, I will produce that video. If you found value in the video, please like the video, share the video, and if you feel that I've earned it, feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. My goal is to give you honest, direct feedback and share what the mainstream media is not. Take care, God bless, and see you next time.